Hello, I'm Durr-e Haque, aka Deah. I'm an Indonesian Pakistani non-binary lesbian.
Hi, I'm Merryana Salem, aka Mary. I'm a Lebanese Aboriginal bisexual woman.
We are two writers who love movies, television and books, especially when they're gay.
And welcome to GayV Club, where we will be analysing LGBT texts
that we like, that we don't like, and how we relate to these texts as gay people of colour.
It's your day.
It's my time.
It is your time.
I've been preparing my whole life for this moment.
Welcome to episode 2 of volume 2, where we are finally going to discuss, and this has actually been very requested on your Tumblr.
I love this.
We are finally going to discuss The Handmaiden!
Woo! The 2016 film directed by Chan-wook, based on the novel by Sarah Waters Fingersmith. Yeah, the Korean Gothic lesbian revenge thriller that captivated Khan.
Yep.
But didn't win anything.
No. It actually hasn't won a lot, this movie.
It won my heart.
It won your heart. That's the most important.
It won a BAFTA for Best Film Not in the English Language.
Oh, true. I guess
It won a bunch of Korean awards.
I say not a lot, I guess, because I feel like this film deserves more recognition.
Yeah.
But, you are always the one telling me, Western validation means nothing. But at the same time, it still is better than
It's still
anything.
nice, though.
Yeah. Anyway.
Just a little rundown of the plot. With the help of an orphan pickpocket played by Kim Tae-ri, a Korean con man devises an elaborate plot to seduce and bilk a Japanese lady, played by Kim In-hee, out of her inheritance. So, just if you haven't seen The Handmaiden yet, go watch it, as long as you're old enough. If you are old enough and you haven't seen it, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Just a heads up, in this episode, we're probably going to be talking about homophobia, lesbophobia, sexual assault,
pedophilia,
violence, child sex abuse. Also, probably going to talk a little bit candidly about lesbian sex. So,
but also,
if you're going to clutch your pearls, go away. I mean, we do rate this podcast as explicit most of the time because I swear too much. But yeah.
But so listen at your own discretion. If you haven't seen The Handmaiden, go watch it, enjoy it. Reflect on how your life has changed now, and then come back. We'll still be here.
Yeah.
So, yes. But for everyone who's left, let's do it.
Let's go.
All right. So, I guess what I want to ask you, because this is your favourite movie, what were
one
your...
of my favourite movies. It's my favourite lesbian movie.
But I feel like you say that you have other favourite movies, but honestly, I don't see you, behave the way
I
you do.
don't have 9 other copies of my other favourite movies.
So I feel like you're trying to be modest, but just admit to yourself it's your favourite movie. Just do it. For me, here, in this room.
It's my favourite movie.
Oh, there we go. Round of applause for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want you to... Because I remember a time before this movie came out. I remember, you before this movie came out.
Yes.
And can you take me back to what you thought about it when you first, saw the trailer? Before you saw it, what were your thoughts? Because I know you're a fan of PCW before this. So what were your thoughts and feelings about it, if you can remember, before you saw it?
Okay, so before I saw this, I've been a fan of Park Chan-wook for a very long time. I love all of his movies beforehand, so actually the first one I watched was I'm a Cyborg, but that's okay. I just watched that on SBS on I just watched that one night on SBS.
Shout out to SBS On Demand. Thanks for having the content.
No, it wasn't on demand back then, but it was just on SBS TV, SBS World Movies. That's what it was.
Oh, yeah.
And I just watched it because it was just a funny, weird rom-com movie that was on TV. And then I watched Old Boy because everyone was saying, you have to watch Old Boy. And then I watched all of his other films, and I watched Stoker because of Mia. So basically, I was always going to watch The Handmaiden anyway. I had no idea before watching this movie that it would actually be gay. Because I love this filmmaker so much, I really wanted to go in cold. So I remember deliberately not reading even the basic premise of this movie before I watched it, and whenever trailers were released, I didn't watch with subtitles.
That is really cold.
Yeah, really cold. I remember the first trailer which was released, it's not the good one though. It's not the best one. The first trailer was released and we were like, oh, this is interesting. And then the second trailer was released, that iconic one, the one that was edited amazingly.
Oh, yeah.
With the song by Red Sex in it.
Yep.
And Looking back, that trailer is like the biggest scam ever, because from that trailer, I kind of assumed that it would be some kind of weird bondage sex
That's what
thriller.
I thought it was.
I thought it would be some weird bondage sex thriller, and
that
like
was the trailer.
with like a black. And you know how there is a kiss in that trailer, and I was like, oh, it's just probably going to be like Black Swan gay. Like, yeah, whatever. I'll still enjoy it because it's my favorite filmmaker.
Right.
I was like, whatever.
You're like, I will. All right. I suppose I'll tolerate this.
Yeah, I was excited.
You were still excited even though you thought it was going to be...
Yeah,
like,
I was excited
Black Swan
anyway. I
gay.
just thought it would be like a regular thriller. I didn't think that it would be... Like,
You were
I didn't
like-
go into this thinking that it would be a lesbian film.
You were like...
I went to it, I'm like, this is a Park Chan-wook film.
You were
So,
like, if
yeah.
someone's going to queerbait me, it may as well.
No, I didn't even feel queer-baited. I wasn't even like considering the fact that there would be any lesbian content that I would actually like invest myself in as watching this movie.
Okay.
I just watch it because I just love this filmmaker so much.
Because I remember when I first saw... I think I only saw that second trailer. I don't remember the first trailer. I just remember the second.
Not a lot of people remember the first trailer.
And I remember thinking, like, oh, this looks like... God, this is such a bad thing for me to think. But I was like, this is like 50 Shades of Grey about period drama.
I know!
With
I
Korean
thought that
people.
too! I thought that too!
I was like, oh, okay.
Because, you know, you see her, like, tied up and you see, like, the mannequin and, like...
Yeah, I was like...
it's a good trailer.
And I remember thinking, I don't want to watch this. Even when you loved it, I was like, I still don't want to watch this. It looked really weird. Like,
yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, my first impressions of the film, I was quite dismissive of it. If I'm not gonna lie, it took me a while to come around to it because I was like, I don't know, that trailer looked real funky. But okay, so then you thought all of this, even though you were seeing it cold, you still had all that impression.
Yeah, I still had that impression. So I was just like, I'm just gonna go see Park Chan-wook's new movie, and it was playing at Sydney Film Festival. I remember because I'd never actually been to Sydney Film Festival before, 2016.
Oh wow!
And I remember just like happening to see an ad that it was on, and I was like, wait, I should check if The Handmaiden is playing here. And it was. And actually, because I just thought it was going to be like a regular Director Park movie, I was like...
Yeah, regular.
I bought 2 tickets and I invited my straight best friend to go see it with me.
Wow.
She like wasn't available, and I'm actually very relieved that she wasn't.
Yeah.
Because I was not expecting...
So-
I was not expecting it to be so romantic.
Take me through, like, you're sitting in the theatre, this movie starts.
Mm-hmm.
What's going through your head as you watch it? Were you, like, literally like, holy crap? Were you internally screaming the whole time? Like,
Yeah.
can you pinpoint the moment where you were like, holy crap, I love this movie?
Yeah, absolutely, I can. There were many moments just when it was just, like, shockingly tender, like, even in that first scene with Hideko and Suki, like, when she, like, gets into bed with her and, like, starts, like, you know, singing her to sleep and stuff, I was like, hold on. This is...
Is this...
What is this tenderness? Like, I was like, this is like actually romantic. What the fuck? And then,
This is not 50 Shades of Grey.
This is not, it wasn't at all what I expected it to be in part 1 of the movie. And then part 2, the horror sets in because you actually have context for everything that Hideko's been through.
Yeah.
Because, you know, her uncle has been forcing her to read and perform pornography for men ever since she was a child. It's absolutely disgusting. It's genuinely
foul.
like so sad and so horrific. It was just shocking. And then the point where I was like, this is actually, I remember I looked at, because I had Letterboxd then, and I looked back at my first ever review of The Handmaiden, like when I first watched it.
Oh yeah, what was that?
Like, June 19, 2016, or June something around there.
Your life is split in half.
I know.
From that moment.
I know. But like the funny thing about that review is how composed it is.
Oh, really?
And like I only gave it 4.5.
Oh my god, can you read it, please?
Okay, sure.
Deah's gonna read us her first...
Looking back at it, it's so funny.
It's kind of like, you know, you see those Twitter profiles of people and you see, like, people who've met on Twitter, they're like, these are our, like, first interactions on Twitter, and they're just like, oh, hey, and they'll be like, oh, I think I like this guy, or something like that. Or, nah, he's got a stupid bedroom, or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've logged this film 18 times.
Oh my god. Oh my god, look at all those logs.
No, those are reviews that I've liked as well.
Okay,
so my first review, 19th of June, 2016. I was expecting this movie to mess me up like PCW normally does, but to my pleasant surprise, it was actually really charming and adorable most of the time. The chemistry between the two main actresses was really sweet, and the first two acts complemented each other so well, and everything was so elegant, so pretty, so gay, and so funny too. One of the best Wallower films I've seen, and my new favourite period drama. I just wish someone had warned me about the giant fucking censored. And the censored bit was the octopus.
Can I just say, for ages I wondered what that asterisk was, and only last night when we were rewatching this movie, and you just saying that now, I was like, oh my god, it's the octopus. Like, I don't know what I thought that was before. I was like, oh, I wonder what this is.
For people who don't know, I have a very traumatic experience from when I was 2 years old of being grabbed by an octopus. So it's something that, like, octopus is just something that I've always been afraid of.
Yep.
So for this film to have a giant octopus, like, it felt like a personal attack.
You were like,
also,
PCW.
I guess possibly like that, like, kind of like solidify. I'm like, oh my god, this movie is made for me.
But maybe that's why as well. Maybe that's why when you first saw it, you only gave it 4.5 stars. You were like, taking away half star for this octopus.
I was scarred, honestly.
But I think as well, like, maybe you can take solace in the fact that the octopus wasn't there to look or be pretty. It was there to be evil.
It was there to be evil.
Which is why, like, it reflects your attitude.
Yeah, my phobia of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's very interesting. I don't know. I don't think that's as tame as you think it is. You seem to be trying to restrain yourself.
Yeah,
it's like,
I know.
It's like my Good Omens review in Junkie. It's kind of like, you know, like fake restraint. Like, where I'm just like, please watch this! David Tennant's walking so funny! Anyway, we're not here to talk about that.
Yeah.
But you did love it from the very moment.
I did love it.
It wasn't one of those movies that grew on you.
No.
It
was like I did love it, and then I think watching it for the second time really solidified it for me. Then I was like, this is my favourite movie.
When you watch it, do you feel like every time you love it more? Or has your love for it, like, plateaued?
In the early rewatches, it's like I enjoyed it more and more each time because I would notice more. Mm-hmm. Now I think I'm pretty certain I've noticed everything, like I've picked it apart, but like I still love it so much. I'm very careful not to rewatch it too often.
Yeah.
Like 18 times in the past 4 years. Like, I think
that's
pretty restrained.
You know,
okay?
I think that's pretty good.
Like, there are heaps of other movies that I have watched like way more than The Handmaiden.
Is this the movie?
I try to like preserve the specialness.
Yeah. Yeah. Is this a movie you show people, like, if someone said to you, like, show me one movie that tells me everything I need to know about you, is this the movie you'd show them?
No, I'm really scared to show people this movie. Like, especially people that aren't gay. I'm kind of scared to show them this movie.
Why?
Because I feel like they don't get it. I'm a bit scared of that. Because, you know, like, when it came out, like, there were quite a few criticisms of it. And, like, I'm scared of, like, that first impression. I'm scared of having to, like, explain it.
Yeah, we will
get to that. And I actually am going to explain it in this episode, so buckle in.
But that does sort of bring, like, the next thing I want to ask you is, like, because this is something I was surprised at, because I wasn't as, like, excited for this film. I've never really watched many PCW. I think this is the only one I've seen.
You've only seen Stoker.
Yeah. Oh, and this, so I've only seen Stoker and this one.
Ooh,
so I don't think I've seen any others. Mm-hmm. And, so I was surprised when you started giving The Handmaiden and telling me about it. I assumed that it must have been made, like, even after I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, I am a dumbass. I'm the resident dumbass of this podcast. And I was like, oh, a woman had to have made this. Because, like, it's just so, it's dealing with so much stuff, particularly from a woman's point of view, that I assumed, like, oh, a man couldn't do this. You know, I was like, a man cannot do this. But, like, why do you think that he does this so well? Like, and do you think he does it well?
Yeah,
or not?
Okay. So I think the first important thing to notice is, yes, he directed it, but the screenplay is actually by a woman named Chung So-kyung. So she's the one who adapted it from Sarah Waters' Fingersmith novel. Sarah Waters is an out lesbian. I don't actually know so much about Chung So-kyung, but, like, I've read, like, many interviews with her and with director Park about, like, the discussions that they had with Sarah Waters on, like, on making this story, and also just, like, the fact that they consulted a lot of Chung So-kyung's lesbian friends.
Nice.
It's kind of funny. I'm like, how many lesbian friends do you have, Chung So-kyung?
Nice.
I'm like, I love that. I love that.
I like that for her. Good for her. You know, I wish more writers would do that.
Yeah. I think it is important to note that, he's not the only person behind this story. Another thing to remember is that director Park, like, he's been making amazing films with amazingly well-written female characters in them since Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, Bae Doona's character in that, Sun from Sense8.
Yes.
Yeah, she is excellent in this movie, Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance from 2002. Then he released Old Boy. It's cool in interviews about The Handmaiden when he's looking back at Old Boy, which is like his most popular film in the West.
Oh,
he says...
I've heard of Old Boy.
Yeah, the thing about Old Boy is it's not particularly feminist at all.
Right.
Like he looked back at it and he says he's kind of embarrassed by it because the only woman in the film doesn't actually know the truth. And so since then...
So she's a fence.
Yeah, so since making that film, he has actually doubled down to work hard. So like pretty much all of his films either have a woman protagonist or they have, a woman character who is basically the protagonist in like most of his films.
He became an ally.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the most offensive things I see written about PCW is that he's like the Asian Quentin Tarantino.
I hate that so much. Sorry. Some people think it's more accurate to call him like the Asian Hitchcock, but I disagree with calling any Asian filmmaker like the Asian equivalent of anyone that works in the West.
Yeah, because if anything, the people in the West just steal. Steal from Asian cinema.
He did say maybe it has to do with the fact that as I get older, I spend more time with my wife and daughter, so I feel myself like becoming more mature and more fascinated and drawn to women's values. So like, that's an NPR.
Do you reckon his
interview
wife
that
has
did.
seen this movie?
Yeah, probably. I'm a cyborg, but that's okay. It's a cute rom-com, but it's about mental illness, and he made that movie because he realized he's like, oh my god, like my daughter actually isn't allowed to see any of my movies. She's not old enough yet. So he made that movie for her, and it's really sweet.
That reminds me of that's why Martin Scorsese made Hugo, because he was like,
really?
My kids can't see any of my movies, so I'm going to make something for them, and he made Hugo.
I mean, Hugo sucks, but
I like Hugo. It's nice. Okay. It's sweet.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned this as an adaptation, but it's extremely different.
Yes.
From its... Like, do you want to talk about, like, how it's different from the book it was based on and how it's the same as well?
Yeah. So, first of all, Fingersmith. It's a 2002 novel by Sarah Waters.
Have you read it?
Yeah, I have read it.
Yeah.
And it's set in Victorian London, actually. So it's kind of the same premise, exactly the same, but the story does deviate. The movie kind of, like, it's a very fat book.
It's a thick boy.
Yeah, but
Yep.
like it's a very fat book, and like it took me ages to read, even though I was loving it because it's also so sad.
Oh,
so just like it's like very emotionally draining. The movie kind of cuts off maybe 2/3, maybe like halfway through the story.
Oh,
and it's just like, you know what? Let's give them a happy ending.
Oh,
and
bold.
But the story itself, in it, like the Suki equivalent, her name is Sue, and the Hideko equivalent, her name is Maud. And there's actually like a whole entire plot twist that they were actually switched at birth. So actually Sue is Maud and Maud is Sue.
Whoa.
And it's actually like been orchestrated by gentlemen, like the Count character and also her aunt character who look after her. It's actually like all been orchestrated so that they can get both of their fortunes. It's
oh
like
my
it's a scam.
God.
It was a scam that was literally like 18 years in the making.
Holy crap!
Yeah.
That is a long game.
Yeah, it is a very long game.
Oh my God!
And it's quite sad because it doesn't go where the story goes, where they both realize, where obviously Hideko knows that Suki is scamming her, and then Suki, like, she is honest to her, and then they decide to work together. That doesn't actually happen. So, and even though Maud is in love with Sue, Maud is like, okay, but despite all this, despite all I'm feeling, like, Sue is still going ahead of this, so I'm still gonna do this to her. It's so depressing.
I do get that, though.
It's so sad. At the end of the book, though, like, they do kind of find each other anyway.
But is it like the same kind of happy ending?
It's not the same kind of happy ending because they have nothing, mostly. So, like, you know, kind of like the Handmaid, like, they run away and they had the money as well.
They have everything.
They have everything.
Like, it's a total win.
Like,
it's not bittersweet.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic, just the way everything turns out at the end of The Handmaiden. But at the end of Fingersmith, they have nothing, but they find each other. Because they have nothing, Maud herself, who has this traumatizing upbringing where she doesn't really have any skills except for this, actually turns to writing her own pornography because it's all that she knows, really.
Wow. That's a very depressing way to finish this story.
It's
I'm glad.
pretty bleak.
Yeah.
But, like, everyone is dead, basically. All the men that hurt her are dead and everything. But, yeah.
Wow. Ouch.
Yeah.
I'm glad that the Handmaiden...
Yeah, the Handmaiden kind of cuts off, like, it doesn't do that. So, basically, Hideko and Suki, they confess to each other that they're scamming, and then they decide to work together instead, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. I meant more like this, obviously, like they were...
So that's the plot of the Fingersmith. Yeah. But the Handmaiden, it's obviously not set in Victorian London. It's set in 1930s Korea while it was occupied by Japan. So there's a lot of stuff about colonialism in this movie, even though it doesn't directly approach it because it's a backdrop.
I was saying to you last night, like, this movie is kind of like Roma in the sense that if you don't know the history of what you're looking at, you can still appreciate it, like, as a movie. You're like, oh, yep, this is a great movie. Yeah. But if you know what's actually going on in the background, it's, like, a million times better and deeper. Yeah. But, yeah, like... And I didn't know any of that until you told me, and I was like, oh, I get it. That's so much cooler.
Yeah, so...
Why do you think PCW chose that time period? Like, you could have just gone back further or could have said at any time. Why that time, and how is that portrayed in the movie?
Well, I guess because the Japanese occupation was an awful thing for Korea at that time. It was an awful thing for a lot of Asia. During World War II, Japan colonized and, like, invaded so many East and Southeast Asian countries. Korea, though, they probably got the worst of it because they were occupied for the longest, from like 1905 up until the end of World War II.
Jeez.
So it was really bad, and I do find it a little bit weird that not a lot of people talk about it. In fact, like, the Japanese government, like, denies a lot of the shit.
Yeah, it's not included in
a lot of the war crimes that Japan has done. But, like, yeah, I think it's specifically to show it's a horrific time. Like, I can't really speak to the Korean experience, but, like, it was obviously a horrific time for them.
I can't imagine being colonized is a good time for anybody.
No, it's not a good time for anybody. So that's what's happening in the macro world. But in the micro world, which is the story between these two women, it's shown through the use of language in Hideko's world, because all the books, like all the pornography that her uncle forces her to read is in Japanese. When they did colonize all of these other countries, they forced the people there to speak Japanese, and they gave Japanese names. So, for instance, Suki, like, her fake name is Okju, but they give her the name Tamako as an equivalent for that. And she has to speak Japanese. Like, language, it was a tool of colonialism and of oppression. Like, my grandmother in Indonesia, she actually knew how to speak Japanese because she lived during that time.
Yeah.
So in the Handmaiden's case, that's reflected with Hideko, who is forced to read all this, like, disgusting pornography in Japanese, which is why at the beginning of the movie she kind of says, all the books he makes me read are in Japanese, I don't want to speak it. So that's why she speaks Korean to Suki, because she knows that Suki is more comfortable speaking that.
She gets real mad, she's like, I hate Japanese, I don't want to read it.
Yeah, there's a direct association of language with trauma and with colonial trauma.
Which is also attached as she's sexually abused. So, yeah, I wouldn't want to speak Japanese either if I were her.
Or if you were from any of those
colonized countries. Any of those colonized countries in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, the use of language is quite interesting in the movie. I didn't pick it up the first time I watched it because the subtitles I had didn't actually say when they were speaking Japanese and when they were speaking Korean. So I didn't pick it up at all. It wasn't until I rewatched it and the subtitles actually were, like, in brackets, like, in Korean. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, in general, like, most releases, they have yellow subtitles for Japanese and white for Korean, so you can tell. I did study Japanese for a bit, so I can tell when they're speaking anyway, like, if I don't have it, but, yeah.
I can
It's an interesting thing to notice when you watch the film. Like, they've linked the language to evil, especially with the uncle. In the final scene with the uncle and gentleman.
Yeah.
With the uncle and the count, he's realised, the count isn't actually Japanese. So he's speaking like Korean very casually to him. But when he gets excited and when he's discussing very gross things in the pornography that he's reading, like he'll switch to Japanese. Yeah. So
the commentary of that.
Yeah.
I love that.
But yeah, that's why I think director Park and Chung Seok-hyun like chose that particular historical setting, because it's a way of linking language to trauma, to colonialism.
Yeah, and this is a story about trauma. So why not make it a wider...
Very much a story like about abuse.
Yeah. Why not really go in on that theme, you know?
Yeah.
If you're going to make a story about trauma, may as well do the whole hog. That's what I always say.
Yeah.
But speaking of the director, one of the criticisms that is constantly levied at this movie, even I'm aware of this.
Which is always brought up with this movie.
Yeah, always brought up with this movie. I don't see it brought up as much with other movies about...
white women, for instance. White lesbians, for instance.
I wasn't going to say it, but there you go. Is this idea of the big monster that is the male gaze, and that... Because there is, 2, 3, 4 sex scenes in this movie? What? How many? Like,
there's one.
There's one, but
there's 2 sex scenes in this movie. One of them is split into 2 parts, so you see them in 2 different contexts.
Yeah, and the criticisms I see are like, it's like, well, this film's actually bad because it's
it's very people are very dismissive of it.
Directed by a man, and it's the male gaze. But I feel like, and I know you do, that the male gaze is like a huge part of this movie.
Yes.
And like criticizing it is a huge part of
It's a huge part of this story.
It's actually one of those instances, when directors are like, oh, the reason this is included is like criticizing it, right? Mm-hmm. But it's actually one of those instances where a movie is doing that and doing it well, but people still dismiss it.
Yeah. This story and the book it's based on is literally about pornography and the violence of the male gaze. I did prepare a whole thing on this because I didn't want to I have so much to say.
She prepared a TED talk for you all.
I did. The first thing I do need to say is, first of all, is that people who say that The Handmaiden is male gazy or voyeuristic really didn't get the point of the film. The film is specifically about the difference between the male gaze and the lesbian gaze. Mm-hmm. Park Chan-wook, he has described The Handmaiden as his most violent film because it is about violent gaze and thinking, and he's specifically spoken about the reading scenes where a group of men hurt and sexually abuse Hideko without even touching her. Yeah. And also because the film deals with violence committed by adults towards children, he said that it's the worst crime that a person can ever commit, even if there is no physical contact, and I honestly agree with that. Sarah Waters, when she was asked about...
Sarah Waters, the
author of Fingersmith, when she was asked, when she was first approached to adapt, she was kind of surprised. She thought it was really random that some Koreans would want to adapt a story into a Korean story. But she looked at Park Chan-wook's films and they're very violent. And the thing is, the novel itself is very violent. And the actual Victorian era novels that inspired the Fingersmith were very violent. So it is about that. So the film specifically has those reading scenes of men forcing her to read them pornography and to even act out some of it. Those scenes were...
Those are hard to watch.
Yeah. Those scenes were specifically designed to show us the violence of the male gaze, even though there's no physical contact, because she has to perform for them. But for some reason, and I will get to those reasons, when Hideko, who has been subjected to all of this violence, is alone in her bedroom with Suki, acting out her own sexual desires, not those of men, but her own desires, people call that male gazy. So that being said, those scenes are really graphic. So we're gonna unpack that. First of all, I think it is important to note that there were obvious ethical concerns for the well-beings of the actresses, especially so soon after the release of Blue is the Warmest Colour.
Oh, yeah.
As we were mentioned in our Decade in Review episode, the 2013 French scene features a graphic sex scene where the actresses were abused during the shoot, which was 10 days long, because the director kind of just wanted to watch them together for his own pleasure, which is obviously disgusting.
Yep.
Some people were worried about that situation happening again with The Handmaiden. I'm relieved to say that it didn't. We know this because there were actually several interviews where they were specifically asked about it and about the treatment of the actresses, because obviously there was that concern. Yes. So the actresses were told exactly what was going to happen for those scenes before the production even started.
Yep.
So they weren't going into it blind.
No.
And the scene was shot in just the one day. I doubt they took the whole day, but like the actresses were given like time for themselves. There were actually no men on set that day, not even director Park. Apparently they even hired a female gaffer to work that day, and I'm like, why don't you have a female gaffer?
Yeah, I know. Seems like, I mean, you could have just had one.
But yeah, so just that out of the way. So, you know, we all know everyone had like a decent time.
Yeah, like I don't think from what you've just described, that sounds like the most ethical way you can do that. It also kind of reminds me of like when you know that interracial romance disobedience.
Yes.
Rachel and Rachel.
Yes.
The Rachels.
Yeah, they edited the sex scenes themselves because they wanted it. I know Desiree Akhavan has spoken about how in the films that she's been in, that she's directed, where there are sex scenes, like she prefers to be in the editing room and like in control of what's happened as well.
That is a good thing, I think, of something that's come off like from that whole instance with Blue is the Warmest Color, is that people, even critics, and like are very cognizant of like, well, you know, there's this idea that you will be held accountable. Like, or you like
that there is that fear. I think there's still that problem because the scrutiny is kind of only focused on lesbian films.
Yes.
Like I think you like with filming like straight sex scenes in a lot of movies, like there have been some awful things happening.
Oh,
and
God.
I think it's like the stories that you hear, it's, you know, people still have a long way to go.
In general, I don't think most movies need a sex scene.
Yeah.
Like, I really don't. Like, most things really don't need it. Like, if you actually need people to see your two characters having sex if this is the purpose you're putting it in for, is to make the audience see that they're in love, like, you haven't done your job. Like, honestly, you haven't. Like, if you think that the audience isn't going to get it, like, unless it's there, go and back to...
Please watch Pride and Prejudice 2005. You know how thirsty they were?
Oh my God.
You know how horny that movie is?
It's the most horniest movie, and they don't even... There's not a single kiss in it, there's not a single lip kiss in that whole movie, except for the one they filmed afterwards, but we don't talk about that because...
Yeah.
But back to the original point. I think this movie, the sex is important because it's like part of that dichotomy of the lesbian gays and the male gays.
Yes.
So you can return to your point. I was circling back
to my TED Talk.
Yes, back to your TED Talk. Sorry, intermission.
So, you know, that aside, people just misunderstood the film. And I feel like this says a lot about how lesbians and bi women of color especially are so poorly represented in film, because a lot of the people criticizing it in that way were white. And there's something about white people, I don't know if you can tell me what it is, but like where they find it so difficult to separate women of color existing together and loving each other from pornographic and fetishist contexts.
It's because of the racism.
Exactly. Like, they're used to seeing lesbians, especially lesbians of color, especially Asians, completely hypersexualized, as if we can only exist for the male gaze.
Yeah.
And this is really harmful because even though these criticisms...
And also only exist for the white gaze.
Yes, and only exist for the white gaze, because even though these criticisms are supposedly given by feminists who seem to have good intentions, like this dismissal of lesbian sexuality and our own autonomous desires, it contributes to internalized lesbophobia. And I know for sure that some people who do or did believe that the film was male gazy are lesbians with internalized lesbophobia. I myself, when I first watched this film, I was 19. I had a lot of conflicting thoughts.
Did you identify as a lesbian when you saw this movie?
No, I didn't. Actually, back then I identified as bisexual.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a lot of conflicting thoughts about it, and I had to spend like a long time actually determining how I really felt. And this is how I really feel.
You did some soul-searching, and here we are.
Yeah, and here we are, like 4 years later.
Yes.
I'm doing a whole podcast episode about it.
Proud of you and this growth.
Yes, I know. Because the thing is, as one of my favourite quotes from this movie goes, men are disgusting. Any lesbian sex scene, when taken out of context, can be turned into something for the male gaze. Gross straight men can watch these scenes or even the entire film and still jerk to it anyways.
Unfortunately, nothing will stop them from doing that.
It's a fact of life, and it's disgusting and it's unfair, and I'm pretty sure nearly all lesbians and bi women have gone through or are going through like a lot of internalized issues about sex and our physical desires because of it, because we're so used to seeing ourselves reduced through this lens. Like, we're so used to thinking that our own desires are like disgusting and dirty.
Yeah.
Like, in fact, I think the people who made this movie were very aware of this, because the reading scenes in this movie where we learn that Hideko is being sexually abused, they were like specifically designed in a way in order to reveal that abuse is happening in a way that still wasn't gratifying to any possible creeps watching the movie. Because I'm very glad they did this, because I think the only thing worse than a film's lesbian sex scenes being taken out of context for male pleasure is when a movie's sexual assault scenes are taken out of context for male pleasure. I do think lesbians and bi women who raise these concerns about this are extremely valid, but also I think so-called feminists outside of our community trying to tell the world and trying to tell us that we can only exist for the male gaze is really homophobic and the last thing that we need.
Yeah, and also like white feminists that say that sort of enforce that idea we only exist for the white gaze as well. Because I think that's an important aspect of this movie is like there's no white person in this movie. There's not a character, like it's not made for white people
it's
in
not
any way.
For you.
Like it's not for you. I think
like you can still enjoy it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But it's not written, I feel like something I think every year with any award ceremony is that the real winner for every award ceremony is the white gaze. Because there's rarely, I should say, a film with a
white gaze, G-A-Z-E?
Yeah, G-A-Z-E,
yes.
sorry. Is the white gaze, like with the Z and the E.
Yes.
Because, like, there's so rarely a film that is, you know, completely absent of whiteness.
And it's so weird when there are films like that recognized in those categories, like it's all kind of like about like the white people's approval.
Yes.
You see this with Parasite this year.
And you see it with, you saw it with Moonlight
you
as
saw it
well.
with Roma. There's always kind of like this one diversity wildcard in the mix.
Yeah, and it's like the film is not for you, it's not about you, but they feel the need to be like, well, it's almost like their praise is the way they make it about them, you know? Like, like even like I've read...
Even if it means completely misunderstanding the core essence.
It's kind of like how you meet those film boys that are like, oh yes, I love Asian cinema, you know, and they'll say like one movie. Like say like... It's
like when you meet a straight guy, it's like, oh yeah, I love Fight Club.
Yeah. The white gaze, G-A-Z-E, like, I think that's one thing I like about this movie, is that there's no white character that helps them. There's not even like a little white comic relief, like it's all...
Yeah, of course.
They're all Korean.
No way. One funny thing that Director Park did say about this film while doing press, people were like, oh wow, this is like the most dialogue any of your films has ever had. And he's like,
oh, that's interesting.
He's like, oh, that's true. And then he kind of went on about Stoker, which he'd done in 2013, which is, you know, it's an American movie with an all-white cast. And he's like, I think maybe it's because I missed Korean in my films. Like, I missed, like, the language in my films, because even though I liked working on this movie, it, like, all the English made me uncomfortable, sort of. So yeah, that's
nice.
Yeah. But returning to my thing, I'm only halfway through my TED
Well,
talk.
keep going. I'm sorry.
So, Fingersmith, the novel it's based on, and The Handmaiden, they both make some really good points about pornography and how it can influence our sexual behaviors.
Yes.
When this film came out, it was sort of funny the way that some people were like, this is so unrealistic, like lesbians don't actually scissor. And I think it's really absurd because, one, there's no set criteria of like correct lesbian sex positions dictated for every lesbian or bi woman to follow. Like, it's different for everyone, and it's all about personal preference and what you and your partners want to do. So I thought it was really weird that some people... I distinctly remember a review by a professional film critic whom I shall not name, but she is a white lesbian who did a review for The Handmaiden for a certain very popular news website.
Just name and shame them. Just do it.
No, I'm not going to. I won't. In which she said that she didn't believe in scissoring.
Well, that's your business.
I remember reading and thinking that's an extremely personal thing to say.
That's none of our business.
Like, it's an extremely personal thing to reveal about yourself, like, in a publication, but okay. But yeah, I feel this says a lot about lesbian sex as a whole, is that no one talks about it, or like before this film at least. So sadly, when you're first starting out, your only point of reference is pornography, and it's pornography that wasn't meant for us.
No.
It's made for men. And it's often the case that this pre-existing knowledge that we have, it comes from graphic content that we shouldn't have been exposed to,
Nope.
but still internalized at a young age.
And it's often like it's a very traumatized thing when you come across, you're like, oh, like, is this what it's meant to be? And
this is very relevant to Hideko and Maud. So like, even in privacy with another woman, it still feels like you're performing. It's like that Margaret Atwood quote, like, male fantasies, male fantasies. You are a woman with a man inside you watching a woman. You are your own voyeur. Like, the scenes in the book and the movie are funny because these women know they're performing. You know how in part 1 you have not the full scene, but you see the way Hideko is acting, like she's acting very like, oh, I don't know what sex is. What do a man and a woman do on their wedding night? What?
Yes.
And then in part 2, you realize that, you know, of course she knows because she's been reading all this pornography her entire life. And in the book, it's really funny as well because, like, she's deliberately being naive. She's like, oh, this worked in the porn that I read, so... Like, she's deliberately being coy so that Suki or Sue will take the initiative to show her.
Well, it worked.
It worked.
You know, it's kind of like, well, if I have to be exposed to porn, then I'm going to use it to my advantage.
Yeah.
Good for her.
Stylistically as well, the lesbian gaze is communicated through point of view shots and also, like, the symmetrical positions.
Oh,
which
were, the point of view shots.
Yeah. They're so funny.
They're
actually, like, hilarious.
Oh, my God.
I don't even know how anyone could find them sexy because it's just so funny that someone stuck a camera there.
Like, yeah.
That's my thought.
I just want to know how they... I just want to actually... Is there, like, did someone film... I know that someone wouldn't have, because obviously that's not the point. But, like, honestly, I would pay to see how that was filmed. Like, to be a fly on the wall, just from a technical perspective, how was that done? Because it's honestly, the angles are really funny.
Yeah. And, yeah, you know, there are also the symmetrical positions as well. And I think... those were choreographed, like, specifically to symbolize those two women as equals. Like, just before the scene, I should also note that Hideko has just done a reading of a lesbian pornographic text, The Sound of Bells. And during that reading, you can see that she herself is aroused by the text and she's, like, dabbing sweat from her forehead.
She's like, ooh.
And even when the electricity goes out, like, mid-performance, she closes her eyes and she just keeps going because she's obviously memorized it. And then when... it's over and she goes back to her bedroom, Hideko, she's actually visibly doing some of the things like
there's
with
the
Suki
parallel
that have been specifically mentioned, like in The Sound of Bells, like with the biting of the shoulder and stuff. And then there's the final scene where they actually have the bells. So, I remember reading an interview the screenwriter did where she said her lesbian friends, like, told her to include the scissoring because according to them it was, quote-unquote, the best one. Again, that must be personal preference. But also... she deliberately didn't include, like, any positions that could represent, like, either of them as being, like, a top or a bottom. Because, like, they were worried that, like, heterosexual audiences would try to translate that into, like,
she was like, verse rights.
Yeah. So, because, you know, like, there's so many, like, so she didn't want people to be like, oh, yeah, so she's the man in this relationship.
But it's because they're both tops.
I don't know. You can't tell. The whole point is that you can't tell from this movie which one
they're both scammers. They're both tops. Okay. I've decided.
Yeah, they are top, like, in life.
In life.
In life.
In life.
They are the top of life. Yeah. That's my argument that those scenes actually aren't male-gazy. Sarah Waters herself is quite happy with those scenes. So I think if the author of the book it's based on is fine, that should be enough for you.
Yeah.
Personally, though, like, whenever I rewatch those scenes, I do skip those scenes anyway because... that's none of my business.
Yeah.
Though they are quite funny anyway. Like,
they are funny. Yeah, I think you watch them once and that's
the
like
dialogue
fine.
is really funny. They've specifically wanted this sex scene to have, like, a lot of talking, like, more than usual because it's so uncommon.
I also think that's nice though because, like, there's, like, it's a very unhealthy thing that's always portrayed that, like, nobody communicates during sex. Like, nah, in real life, like, that's all, like, you do that a lot. You gotta, like...
That was, like, the biggest problem with Blue is the Woman's Color. It's like, why would you do that to a girl
without asking?
First date? Without asking. Like... horrible conditions of the actresses aside, like, why would you do that?
Consent is the warmest colour, really, you know, I feel?
Yeah.
Consent is the warmest colour. Yeah. But no, can I say though, like, it is one of my favourite tropes when one person, like, person A is saying to person B, I don't know how to kiss, like, you'll have to show me. It is literally one of my favourite tropes. It is so funny and it's usually very cute.
Yeah.
If not, it's either very cute or just very awkward, which I love both. Both outcomes are good. So, yeah, I don't know. I generally, as I previously said, I don't generally like watching sex scenes in movie. I have the same attitude. It's none of my business, really, and I don't feel like 9 times out of 10, in fact, 9.5 out of 10 times out of 10, it doesn't need to be there.
It doesn't need to be there, no.
But no, I do like how they're talking, though. I think that's very cute and very...
And they're really funny. And also, like, the way that scene, it cuts to Hideko's, she's having an art class, and then you see her drawing, and it's... it's the shittiest drawing.
It's so bad.
It's so funny. I remember watching this for the first time, like, in the cinema, and, like, everyone was really quiet during the sex scene, and I was, like, losing my mind.
You were like, what?
I was like, I don't. And then, you know, the drawing pops up. Like, the camera pans, like, it goes from the account's perfect little profiles of Suki, and then it goes to Hideko's shitty drawing.
I think it's a good tension release.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's a good tension release. It's like... It's time to not be sexy now.
Yeah, it's giving you the permission, like, to just laugh for a second to get that, like... Because, you know, I feel like everyone feels a bit stupid when you're watching a sex scene. You're just like, okay, I'm watching this, I guess. This is what I'm looking at. But, yeah, so, I don't know. As far as sex scenes goes, it's not the worst one that you could watch. But, yeah, I didn't know that thing about them specifically picking positions.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Which more movies...
Like, everything's symmetrical.
I did notice that, but I didn't think about that being the result. Do you know what I mean?
It's supposed to be about equality, also because this movie is also about class. Suki she's a Korean peasant, basically, and Hideko is, like, a lady.
I like the way that the movie, like, tricks you with this, but, like, and sort of, like, in the extended version, you see at the start, like, you see her leave the town that she's living in, and everyone's crying like, it should have been me, and you're like, oh, like, and if you hadn't seen it, you didn't know, you'd be like, oh, she's leaving and she's clearly very poor, and she's going, you know, she's been chosen,
she's wearing the best clothes she has,
and she's been chosen to work in this fine household, and you think like, oh wow, this is probably the opportunity of a lifetime for her, which I guess in a way it is, but not for the reasons you think. And you know, she gets there, and I don't know, I personally think that the extended version shows that class disparity a bit clearer, or
I mean, it is there in the first
it is
one.
There, but like, I think
all those scenes, but the way that they order it,
way that they order it. Which brings me to the next thing I want to ask you, because obviously I only watched the extended version last night for the first time. Yeah. But you've seen both multiple times. What are the differences, obviously, and do you have one that you prefer?
In general, when I'm telling people to watch this movie for the first time, I tell them to watch the theatrical version, only because the pacing is, like, when you don't know what's going on in this movie, the pacing is better for the theatrical version. Then I tell them to watch the extended version if they liked it, and of course they liked it. In the extended version, we don't actually find out that Suki is a scammer until the count first arrives at the house. You find out in the first 10 minutes of the theatrical cut. So you kind of just have this half hour of Suki and Hideko, like, spending time together, and it's a bit gay. I wonder if this is just going to be like a maid, like, falls in love with the lady that she's waiting on, and you know, she's doing up all these little buttons and and dressing
up the corsets.
Yes, and it's very, you know that one tweet that's like in a period drama. It's like, Miss, can I undo all of these, like, tiny little buttons down the back of your dress? And it's like me not breathing. Yeah, so you think it's going to be that, and then it turns out, shocking twist, Suki is a scammer. And then even more shock twist, Hideko is a scammer. And then they scam together.
I know.
And it's lovely.
It's so great, because every time you think the plot twists are done in this movie, there's one more. Like, when you think you know? Yeah. When you think you know?
It's like, oh, you think don't. You know what this movie is? Fuck you.
And I think that's really fun. And I didn't expect, really I didn't know anything about this movie. I just knew you were obsessed with it, and you gave it to me to watch, and it took me ages to come around for, because at that time I still wasn't used to watching, like, non-English films. So I usually had to build up to them, because I'd be like, right, I've got to sit down, I've got to really read and blah, blah. So I went, I think it was like 45-degree day, and I went down to my auntie's house, because my auntie's got sweet air conditioning. And she was away, so I had a key to her house, so I just went down there, sat in the aircon, turned on my laptop, put on the Handmaiden. Had no idea what I was in for, really. I knew it was gay, because obviously I was like, if this is Dee's favourite movie, it's got to be gay. So I knew that, but, like, every time, like, I remember actually pausing it at the bit where, you know, where you think that they've turned on Suki, and they've left her at the mental asylum.
The end of part one.
The end of part one. Like, I remember pausing and going, no, I don't want to watch this movie.
That was like, no.
I was like, no, I don't want to watch this movie. I remember actually getting up. I went to make myself a cup of tea because I was like, oh, what the heck is this movie? Like, no. And then I was like, okay, sit back down, let's watch. And then, of course, that part two is hot. Like, that part is horrible.
It's a horror movie.
So I was like, oh my God, this is terrible. This is terrible. This is terrible. And I kept waiting, like, oh my God, but when am I going to find out what happened? I was like, don't tell me it ends there. But then, like, what do you know? What do you know? It's like, I love that about that. I think that's my favourite part about this. Yeah. Even more so than the romance for me. I love a good scam.
I love a good scam.
I love I kind of love, like, this is one of the things about my favourite things about the Ocean's 11 movie is how, like, this movie plays with your perspective. And I love movies that play with that. So, like, I love
especially because this movie is in two parts and you kind of see a replay of everything from Hideko's perspective the second time, and, like, it has different angles, so you can kind of see, like, the sly way that Hideko is, like, watching Suki when she doesn't know, and also, like, that test that Hideko does when they first meet, like, she writes on that piece of paper, like, can you read that, to, like, really test her, and actually, like, what Hideko has written is actually, like, Suki's real name, and she's written it, she's like, are you sure you can't read this? Like, I love that, and they're both, like, just really interesting characters. Yes. Like, I love women. Like, did you know women have minds?
Women have minds.
Women have minds.
And I'm so sick.
Shut up.
I'm going to be a professional Saoirse Ronan in Little Women, in Little Women impersonator, and I'm just adapting that one line for everything. Yeah. We were in Coles the other night, and I was like, I'm so sick of not being able to find the lamb in this Coles.
But yeah, I love these two characters. Like, Suki is just really fun. Like, she's obviously a con artist, a thief, a savior who came to ruin my life. Like, she's really funny. And one thing that I do prefer about the theatrical version over the extended cut, because you find out later in the extended cut that Suki is a scammer, you lose all her little voiceover comments that happen in the beginning. So it's really funny, like, when she's like, those fuckers, like, yes, her breath, like, to all these things, and when she's like, oh, when she's in the madhouse, I'll have these earrings for myself, like, stuff like that. Like, it's really funny, and you lose that in the
I felt like, I love the narration. Like my favourite narration is when, in the theatrical version, when she sees Hideko for the first time. And
she's like, bloody hell, he didn't tell me she was so pretty. It's like, oh, gay.
The Walla Walla energy. I love it. I love it.
I love Hideko because it's so awful what's happened to her, and she's a character where you can very clearly see all her motivations, like, through the trauma that she's experienced. She's not even, like, totally virtuous before it. You can see how she herself is corrupt. Like, she's actually very violent.
Yeah.
Like, in the first part of the movie where she's just acting innocent and naive around Suki, and then you see just how violent she is herself and how cruel it has made her.
Yeah.
And you kind of see that in the book as well, like how Maud chooses just to let Sue be locked up and like not help her. How Maud chooses to just keep going through with that.
I like how in part one, when Hideko hits Suki, you're like very shocked. You're like, oh my God, like she just hit her. Yeah. Like, and then when you watch part two and you realize like she hits people.
She hits everyone.
Like she hits everyone. It's very much like, oh, all right. You like she like you realize like she genuinely snapped in that moment. Which is interesting. You're like, of all the, like most of those scenes, like you feel like, oh, it's revealing how much of a liar, like that she was being, but then
how much of a rotten bitch she is.
But when you see like how violent she is, it actually shows you like how hurt she actually was. Yeah. Like in the scene where she hits
and the stuff that she goes through herself as well.
Of course, yeah.
Oh my God, when her uncle like hits her hand with the beads, that's so fucked up.
And her auntie is just standing there. Yeah, oh no, her auntie, what's her name?
Yeah, Her uncle's wife. Her uncle's previous wife is
Yeah.
just standing there laughing.
Messed up.
Yeah, like he hits her with the beads, and then you're reminded when Suki was going through her stuff, she finds that exact clothing that she was wearing that day, so she's kept it there in that, like, at the bottom of the drawer the whole time, like with the beads attached.
Yeah, and she drops it on the floor.
Yeah, and she drops it on the floor, and she's like, what the fuck is this? So she's actually, like, held on to all these things, and then I guess it's kind of a symbolic thing that that she has the bells at the end of the movie, which
I
like
wasn't going to
those.
say it because I don't,
Yeah.
to each their own is all I will say.
To each their own.
To each their own.
So it's kind of like she's taken a lot of the things that have been used to hurt her, and she's kind of found her own empowerment in it.
Yeah, and now they're going to give her
even
pleasure.
But also, like, it's not in like this is happy now that it's like that. It's also messed up because it still shows that it's from that.
That is part of her.
And like even like the rod that her uncle beats her with, that's the thing that Suki uses to smash the snake sculpture at the end.
But what I also love about this movie is how pretty it is.
It's gorgeous.
It is so pretty. Oh my goodness. Like, honestly, even if I had no idea what they were saying, I would still watch this movie because it is beautiful.
Yeah, like in all the technical categories, it's amazing. I love the score so much.
Oh, fantastic.
It makes me so happy.
It is beautiful. And just the costuming, the attention to detail. I mean, I don't know what fashions were like being not alive in the 1930s in Korea. It's very difficult for me to ascertain how correct it, but it looks stunning. It looks like there was so much detail. Just all of it. Every shot, I feel like, is like a postcard from another time, and it's lovely. First of all, I want to ask you, what's your favourite costume? And then I want to ask you, what is your, like, favourite shots of the movie? And why?
Aesthetically, I really love the green dress that she's wearing when the Count is first like, we should work something out. It's really cool. Like, the design is really interesting. Like, you think it's just a regular shoulderless dress, but actually there's, like, mesh going up to her neck. And at the back, there's a shot of her back, and it's, like, buttons, like, in the mesh that are green going down her back, like, into the dress. I thought that was really cool.
Stunning.
Her wedding was really nice. Like, just the design on that is really intricate. I like the way that this film repeats costumes.
Yeah.
That was my favorite. Like, when you see the aunt in the reading in the white kimono, and then you see Hideko wearing it again 10 years later. That's... It's gross, but, like, that's
it's
there.
Also very foreboding when you learn what happens to the aunt.
Yeah.
It's very foreboding.
I also love the use of gloves in this movie a lot as well.
Oh, nice.
Especially, you'll notice Hideko is wearing black gloves when she's being, like, deceptive. Especially in the third part of the movie, like, when she's with the Count and he's assuming that they've just locked up Suki. She's wearing black gloves the whole time.
I did not know this.
Yes.
Oh my god, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's really fun. And just stuff like that.
If
you look at, like, the colours of the gloves that she's wearing and, like, what it means.
There are so many gloves. Like, that scene where she opens the drawers and they're all colour-coded.
Yeah.
I lost my mind. I was like, who does that? But also, like, I love it as well.
Yeah. My favourite scene in the movie, which is the library destroying scene. I actually think that's the most romantic scene in cinematic history. Like, the way that the music swells and the way that Suki is just, like, so immediately, like, I'm gonna fucking destroy everything. Like, they take all these symbols of the male gaze and, like, everything that was used to her and they destroy them. And I just think, like, there's nothing more romantic than that.
I also think it's made more romantic as well by the fact that Suki, like, never saw any of this.
Suki never saw any of this.
She just sort of deduces from being in that room and from talking to Hideko that this has happened to her.
Hideko hands the book over to her and Suki's like, I can't even read Japanese. And then she keeps turning the pages and then you see that awful painting of the octopus, which is a real painting. And she sees the painting and she's like, oh, this is what you've been forced to read this whole time.
Yeah.
And then just, like, 0 to 100, she starts destroying the whole library.
She's just like, Kill Bill fire
and Hideko joins in too, and it's so lovely. And then there's that shot of them just running across the green.
Yeah, the
and
music
they're laughing
in that scene.
that was like, that's my favorite shot in the whole movie.
When they're running?
When they're just running.
Yeah.
Like, it makes me so happy because they are so happy. They're like really high off like what they've destroyed basically. And they're together and they've escaped. Like, it's lovely. And I think that was the moment where I was like, this is the best movie ever.
It is so fulfilling, like that moment.
It's so fulfilling.
Were you ever afraid watching this movie that it would have a sad ending? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when part 1 ends, I was like devastated. I was like, oh damn, they really are going through with this. Like, she really is going through with this scam. Damn it. Like, when they're driving Hideko to the hospital and then, you know, she gets grabbed and that track plays, the betrayal. They also play that same track when Suki catches Hideko kissing the count.
They
well.
do.
So it's like the betrayal of that moment is there as well. Yeah, so I was like, oh god, how is this going to end? It didn't feel particularly long. It's only like 40 minutes, part 1, in the theatrical version.
You know better than I do.
For maybe less than 40 minutes. It's not that long, so I'm like, this can't be the end of the movie. And then you switch immediately to Hideko's perspective.
No, I didn't think it would be the end of the movie, but like maybe the end of the story because, you know...
Yeah, with the sad ending and like you see all of this and like where they've led up to, and then, you know, there's this scene where Hideko like does try to kill herself because she doesn't want to go through with it at all anymore. Like, she doesn't even care that her uncle will get all her money. She just wants to end it because she knows that she loves Suki so much that she just wants to.
And also, like, look at her life.
Yeah, look at her life. Like, she was gonna do that in the first place, but then the count was like, no, don't kill yourself. Your assets are so sexy.
But the whole reason, but doesn't she make a deal with him to give her the opium? So
she makes a deal with him for him to give her the opium, like, if she agrees to basically hand over all her money to him in this elaborate scam. So, like, end all be all, like, regardless of that, like, Hideko, like, she wanted to die. And then, you know, there is that scene, like, at the cherry tree where her aunt killed herself. And, you know, she's dropped, and then Suki catches her. And it's, like, the most relieved that I've ever felt in all of it.
I remember, literally, can you imagine me sitting 45 degrees on my auntie's couch?
I know.
I was just like, this is too much.
Yeah, in part 1, when Hideko pushes Suki out of the scene, you don't see Hideko's face. You just see their feet and them pushing, and then you see just, like, the back of Hideko's head as she's pushing her out. But at this scene, like, you see, it's an amazing performance from Kim In-hee, where she's so angry and she's so heartbroken, just, like, pushing her out. And so, like, when she reaches, like, for the box, which you know has the rope in it because Suki found it earlier, it's like, no! And then...
But it's okay.
But then it's okay. I mean, it's not okay because when Suki finds out, like, she's being scammed, she drops. Hideko's like, that fucking son of a bitch. She's like...
It's actually so funny though. I burst out laughing.
Like, it's really dark, but it's so funny. And she's like, oh, wait, sorry, miss. And then, it's...
But do you think, though, that's why some people dismiss this movie? Because it is happy? Like, because I feel like sometimes, and we'll talk about this more in a future episode, but I think sometimes gays will dismiss a movie that has a happy ending.
Gays will dismiss movies with sad endings too.
Gays
It's
gays
really
be
weird.
dismissing movies.
I think a lot of people, when, even me, like, trying to get people to watch this movie, I was like, it has a happy ending, and people were like, oh shit, gotta watch this movie, because we were so used to seeing really sad stories. So I really love, like, it shouldn't be escapism, but it is, of, like, some lesbians getting a happy ending and getting everything that they wanted.
I personally think it's a realistic ending for what happens. I mean, they still have to live in relative hiding because they
still have to live in hiding.
You know,
but, like, they got money. Yeah,
they got their dollar bills.
Yeah,
but yeah, like, I think it's a very happy ending.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. Like, it's a very satisfying ending. One thing that I do like as well is that
the uncle gets murdered.
The uncle and the count, like, they kill themselves because like, first off, like, the uncle is, like, torturing the count. First of all, this is where, like, some people who dumb were like, oh, now I see how Park Chan-wook directed this film, because, you know, this guy's having his fingers taken off. these are the people that are like, oh, Park Chan-wook is the Asian.
Is the Asian Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
Like,
it's so you have that, like, they are destroying each other, and then obviously they die from
the mercury
in the
cigarette.
Yeah.
And I like that because prior to that scene, when he opens his case, you see the blue. There's the blue coloured cigarettes and there's the white coloured cigarettes. One,
and then he puts all the normal ones in his mouth, so that those are the only ones left. You also see the blue cigarettes like earlier in the scene, like with like when it's just the uncle and the count talking as well. Even though I hate that scene, like that's a nice detail that they set up. Yeah.
The foreshadowing in this movie is fantastic.
Everything is just tight. Like, the narrative is just tight in this movie. Like, there's not a drop of spilled ink. Nope. Even in the way that Hideko and the Count talk to each other, it's kind of like...
I love those scenes.
They're both, like, making fun of each other. In the book, the Count does know... Like, gentleman does know that Maud is a lesbian. Like, he figures it out kind of like...
I thought he figured it out here, though.
No, he didn't, because he genuinely thought that Hideko was putting the moves on him in part 3.
Oh, right.
Like, yeah. And it's kind of... He's kind of mean to her, though. So it's like,
Yeah.
But,
It's so funny to me that he's, like, thinking of her when he dies. It's like... Bro, she don't care about you.
She doesn't care about you. Like, you're literally thinking of her and she's holding hands with her girlfriend. They're doing the shoulder resting. The iconic gay shoulder resting. Gays be just resting their heads on their lovers' shoulders.
They do.
But yeah, so they destroy themselves. It'll go until you crash the library, but like the men destroy themselves.
Yeah.
And, not that, I'm all for like murderous women in stories.
But I like that they kill themselves.
But I like that they didn't do that in this. They were kind of just like, they kind of just washed their hands of them.
Yeah.
Like
you call it a revenge like movie, but I think it's not, it's like in Beyonce, always stay gracious, best revenge is your papers.
Yes.
Like it's literally that. Like it's them not being like, we're gonna plot and murder. Like it's not like in, say, I don't know, I'm using this as an example, though they're not really comparable films, but it's not like in Thoroughbreds, where she's like, we're gonna kill my horrible stepdad because he's done all this shit to me. Like it's literally like, we're gonna get out of here, like, and I like that, But I want to ask you, why do you love this story? Like, I don't want you to tell me why it's good. I want you to tell me why you love it.
Okay, why I love this story.
Yeah. Why does it speak to you? And why do you think, when you watched it at that point in your life and when you watch it now, that it still is just so, like, you love it so much?
Because I'm a dyke with taste.
Okay,
that's the short answer. But I don't know. I feel like never has a movie ever been so satisfying with pretty much everything, like all the kind of tropes that I love.
Yeah.
In one movie, like it's gay, it's made by Park Chan-wook. There's a scam. There's a bunch of plot twists. Like
it's a period piece.
Yeah, it's a period piece. It criticizes colonialism.
Nice. Yeah, true.
Like, they're hot. They're hot, they're funny, they're really well written. Like, yeah, I guess that's why it's good, though. It's not really why. Well, I guess because I've never really seen a story like this before, I don't think I like romances so much, actually. Like,
really?
I don't think I'm that into romances. Like, I feel like most of my other favorite films really aren't romances. For instance, if you look at Children of Men and Merryana and... I'm not into stories which are kind of just romances. I'm into stories which have more than that to say. And I think this story definitely does that. Like, this story says a lot about trauma. It says a lot about just things that I care about. Like, for instance, the male gaze. Like, for instance, trauma. Like, this is, in some ways, it is quite personal to me.
Yes.
So, yeah. And, like, I'd never seen a film before like that really like legit ticked all the boxes. Like even the octopus being there, like even though I hated seeing it was horrifying for me. It was like a sign. I'm like, this movie is like for me.
But it's also a horrifying thing in the movie.
Yeah, it's a horrifying thing in the movie.
Like it's not there to be like, isn't this a gorgeous octopus? Isn't this
literally when does that happen? Shape of Water.
Yeah.
No, not really. For me, even though I know it isn't, even though I know there are lesbians who are actually Korean that like love this film even more, who must love this film even more than me, but it
doesn't have to speak to you.
But it doesn't have to speak to me like
reason.
so specifically for that reason. Like it was just nice. So yeah, I am #1 Handmaiden stan, and I love that that's like my rep.
I love, no, that is your rep on the internet. Like, literally as soon as we started, like, announced this podcast, people were asking you, like, when you were going to talk about this movie.
I was, like, shocked, actually, that in our earlier episodes, like, we'd gone, like, 4 episodes and I hadn't mentioned The Handmaiden once. And I was, like, when I realized that, I was like, oh my God.
Not
like,
till,
like, good job. And then and that's why when we did our Goldfinch episode, like, I snuck it in. That it was like a good adaptation of a long book. That's all. That's right. Like, I just had to mention it because
I didn't realize. I suppose why would we
disservice.
mention it in Good Omens? Why would we mention it?
Yeah, why would we mention it there? But like, yeah, we had no reason to mention it. But like, it's shocking that I would embark on making a podcast and not talk about this. But yeah.
We're giving the people what they want.
Yeah.
And also giving you what you want.
Yeah. Like, this has been so fun.
I'm glad.
So I feel like once this is done, like, I'll realize, oh, I forgot to say this. So I don't know. Can we do a part 2 if there's that much stuff?
We can record
Let's do
more
that.
if you think of anything. But I do have one more question for you. Because, like, I do wonder, there's no such thing as a perfect gay film. But do you think this comes close?
I think this is a perfect gay film.
Oh, you think it is?
I genuinely think it is. Like, what's bad about it?
Nothing.
What more do you want? Like, the thing about gay cinema is if it's centered on being gay, it gets a bit boring. Like, they kind of get a bit all the same. Like, those stories are important, obviously. Like, I think we should have different variations of the same stories told as much as, straight people get those stories told.
Yeah.
But, like, I love that this had actual plot. And even though it doesn't focus on them being gay, like, them being gay is just, like, so intrinsic to the story.
Yes.
So that's why it's
but
so
it's
lovely.
But it's also, like,
it's just good that it's 2 women.
That's right. And I also love that it's actually a positive thing in the movie.
Yeah, it is a positive thing.
And they're never really, I mean, not in a direct, overt way, treated like homophobically. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the whole trauma that is happening with them is that, with her child abuse. It's not. Yeah. It's not.
It's not about the homophobia that. No, because there isn't really actually that much homophobia.
There isn't, though.
There isn't at all.
Like,
not really. Even in the book, there is.
Even the Count, when, I don't know.
Yeah, the Count doesn't know.
I feel like, I don't know, but sometimes I feel like he sort of suspects it. He suspects that she's gay, because...
He's just like, for a man to seduce you would be, and then he opens the door and she's like, impossible.
Yes!
Like, that's right. I kind of interpreted that as him thinking that she's so desensitized to anything to do with sexuality that she could never be seduced, like, given what she's been exposed to.
True.
In the book, there is a lot of homophobia from gentlemen towards Maud. I kind of love the way that the book uses the word queer. It's like it's winking at you, because obviously queer didn't mean that back then, like where it's set. But it's like, Sarah Orders is just like winking at you, like, in the meantime, because specifically, like, when she uses queer to mean odd, it's, like that. There are also a few instances in the movie where it feels like it is specifically winking at lesbian audiences, because especially got that from the lilies, the water lilies that you see throughout the film. Maybe people don't know, but like a lot of Asian lesbians use water lilies as kind of like a symbol, as kind of like a signifier, like that, that they're part of that community. So you see water lilies in the bath scene, and you also see them like on Hideko's bedside table, like for the sex scene as well. So in that way, it's kind of like the movie is winking specifically at Asian lesbians watching the movie, that, this is for us. I'm not saying that it's a good LGBT film because it doesn't have homophobia. Like, I don't know, sometimes it's nice that you don't have to deal with that shit when you're watching. But because
I think if you were dealing with all that on top of this, and I feel like it's nice that their relationship is like this island.
And I think, though, like, the story in itself is enough of a commentary on homophobia and, like, society's attitudes towards pornography and towards women's sexuality. Like, it's still kind of there. It's not like it doesn't exist. It's not like the movie treats it like it doesn't exist. But yeah, we were talking about how The Handmaiden hasn't really won a lot of accolades, especially in the West. Some people are kind of mad to this day that the Academy never nominated it for Best Foreign Language Film. The way that the foreign language category, which is now called like the Best International Film category, works is that different countries will have a different board or like committee of government like to send it through. In South Korea, the Ministry of Culture selects a Korean film to submit to the Academy to become eligible for that particular category. And actually at the time that The Handmaiden was released, Park Chan-wook was on a talent blacklist. Where basically he and a bunch of filmmakers and a bunch of artists and writers, they were on it because the government didn't believe that their work represented their values. So that's why he was blacklisted. So that's why none of his films could ever have been submitted to it, including The Handmaiden, which is why they chose another film to submit. Their loss. That actually, the thing is, a few months after the Oscars and everything, those ministers in South Korea actually got jailed for corruption. So that blacklist isn't in place, and so it's good to see South Korea submitting a lot more. Actually, since that blacklist has been abolished, the only films that they've submitted have been from filmmakers from that blacklist. So they submitted...
they were aware. They were aware.
It's they've been making such good film for so long, they're finally getting that help. For instance, Burning by Lee Chan-dong, who was on the blacklist, was submitted. It didn't get nominated. This year, Parasite gets submitted, and Bong Joon-ho, he was on the blacklist previously. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's nice to see those things changing. But yeah, other than that, that's just for Best Foreign Language. I will never forgive basically any awards body for not nominating The Handmaiden for literally every other category, especially the technicals. I think y'all suck for doing that. Yeah, not to be a bitch, but I think The Handmaiden is actually so underrated.
Yeah. No, it is.
In general, it's well known as a very good film. But I
feel like it has a bit of a cult status, honestly.
Yeah, I think it will. Given people definitely want to see the film, but it's not quite part of that canon yet.
No.
And I want it to be. And I think especially within the film gays, GAYS, that it should be more of, kind of how we all have those mandatory watches that everyone's got to watch this. Everyone's got to watch this. I'm just so sick. I'm just so sick of white lesbians telling me to watch fucking Carol. Yeah.
But I think you can see that The Handmaiden has had an influence on films.
Yeah.
Because I believe that Portrait of a Lady on Fire was deeply influenced by this movie.
Oh my god, Portrait of a I love Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I love it as its own original thing. No one loves this movie more than us.
Yes.
Honestly.
Nobody.
But also I feel like Portrait of a Lady on Fire is The Handmaiden without plot.
Yeah.
It borrows a lot of plot beats, and they have very similar confrontations between them.
Very similar shots. There are
very
similar shot for shot. Not shot for shot.
Not shot for shot, but there are very similar shots, and it's really nice.
But you feel Celine Sciamma, she's a fan of The Handmaiden, and she was I can do this with some French bitches.
I have no idea if she is though, because when she's talking about her influences, she hasn't mentioned it, so I don't know.
Because if she did, we would be we knew it!
So I don't actually know for sure, but I think the visual similarities are undeniable, and there are some plot beats which are undeniably very similar to The Handmaiden.
The dynamic is
the dynamic is very similar, so it's really nice, and it's just a beautiful film. So I can't wait when I can purchase it very legally from a shop. And
me too.
And in this case, I actually mean that I'm going to purchase it legally from a shop.
Why? What did you mean before?
Shut up. And in this case, I actually mean that I'm gonna purchase it legally from a shop, and then I want to be able to make some posts just with those visual similarities, because that's all I could see.
Yeah.
In fact, I probably wouldn't like Portrait of a Lady on Fire so much if I didn't see those similarities from The Handmaiden anyway. So yeah.
But I remember saying to you after I saw Portrait of a Lady, you were saying to me, I can't wait to make, parallel gifts. And I was saying to you, I feel this is my, the love you have for The Handmaiden is the love I will have for this movie. Because I don't like the violence. Even though I know it's not, it's not a violent film. The violence I'm not a fan of, and it's very dark, and, the part 2 is very horrific. The reason I like Portrait of... I'm a fan because it's just nice.
It's just nice.
Yeah, it's just nice. Yeah. And also,
The Handmaiden is nice, but it's not just nice.
It's not just nice. Yeah. But I'm a big fan of things... I'm a big fan of the wholesome film genre.
Yes.
That's my whole thing. And so, for me, that's why I personally, have a love a little bit greater for Portrait of a Lady, but I also love The Handmaiden. Yeah. It is... They're both excellent.
Yeah.
But, The Handmaiden ran so that Portrait of a Lady on Fire could chill out on the beach.
That's true.
Yep.
That's true.
But do you have any final, thoughts, nuggets of wisdom about The Handmaiden before we wrap this up?
I don't know, just, watch it.
Watch it.
Watch it, read The Fingersmith. You should tell everyone to watch The Handmaiden. I think that. I said at the start of this podcast that I'm, a little bit scared to invite, straight people to watch this movie, but, this is...
But I feel like if they have listened to us talk about it and watch it, they will appreciate it differently to if they just found it of their own accord. And I feel like a lot of people who you've recommended The Handmaiden to, even, on your blog, usually come back and they're like, I love this movie.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I've never seen anyone not do that.
Yeah. Okay. Eventually we're going to do an episode on just, LGBT period dramas.
Yes.
So if I've missed anything, let me know and we can talk about it in there.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a bunch of stuff that we've already mentioned on this podcast that I want to revisit in this episode because, yeah.
In the period drama.
In the period drama episode, yeah. That's going to come up soon, but not next week. I don't know. What are we doing next week?
What are we doing next week?
What are we doing next episode?
New episode next fortnight. We haven't decided yet what we'll do. So
We haven't decided yet what we'll do, but
it's it'll be a surprise for you and it'll be a surprise for us.
Yeah. But yeah, thank you for listening to GayV Club. If you like us, please subscribe, rate, leave a nice review on wherever you listen to podcasts. Contact us on social media, Instagram and Twitter at GayV_club. Yeah. We also have a YouTube for people who require closed captions. By the way, the DMs on our socials are open, so if you don't feel comfortable openly adding us, you can just slide into those DMs.
Slide into our DMs. Also, I'm starting to slowly make my way back to Twitter. I had lots of time off because I was finishing uni and it was just too stressful to be on there and finishing uni. But
congratulations on finishing uni, by the way.
Thank you.
And, I don't think we mentioned that on this before.
I'm trying to apply for honours right now, but I've finished my normal degree, which is good. But yeah, I went off Twitter for the last 6 months of my degree because I was like, it's too much to be reading about the world and also trying to finish uni. But I'm slowly making my way back. So hopefully I will be back on there. But yeah, you can find the links to our personal socials on the GayV Club pages.
Yes.
Everyone, go watch something nice. Be
Go
safe.
watch The Handmaiden again.
Go watch The Handmaiden again.
And keep in mind everything that I've said, basically.
Oh, and don't watch it on Netflix, apparently, because the subtitles are wrong.
On Netflix, the subtitles are really fucked up for some reason. I don't understand why, they didn't get the official subtitles that were, released by CJ, and they just did their own again. I know Netflix has been known to do that, but yeah, they're really messed up, just the vocab is all wrong. So... please acquire it legally from a shop somewhere else, actually.
Yeah. Either acquire it legally from a shop or acquire it legally from a shop.
If you can. I mean, because I think that this film absolutely deserves that. Most of the films that we love that we talk about absolutely deserve that, so yeah.
Yes. All right, everyone, be good, and we will hear from you next time.
Yes, bye!
Bye!